Hi everyone, I'm Renee Seltzer and we are here to talk about lead generation. So a little bit about me is I am the owner of Ellison Ellery Consulting, and we are going to talk everything about lead generation that I've applied over my 20 years. I've really kind of focused in on driving leads for businesses and higher ed. So really excited to meet all of you. Hello. And if you can, feel free to shoot us an email, drop us a line on social media. We are so excited to chat with you. So just get this started. We're going to have a fun time. So this is a super long webinar because there is so much to cover, but we are going to cover it all. And excuse the wire. I tried everything wirelessly and my AirPods and everything is not working for me today. But at the end of this, you're going to feel like this dude right here because you're going to have a sense of what to do next. You have new, fresh ideas to bring back to the business, and we're all going to be like him. All right, 85% of B2B businesses consider lead generation to be one of their primary challenges. And if that's in your business too, I bet it is, you're in good company. 95% of visitors that come to your website will not return to your website. And we're going to talk through real strategies on how to get them to come back and how to get them to become paying customers. I know. It's if you start to see how much money we're all wasting on driving new people to your website that don't convert, it's mind-boggling. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk all about leads, right? So we're going to also talk about commonly missed opportunities. And then there's also probably channels that you're working on that you're like, oh, that channel doesn't work for me, but it's probably not being executed to its full advantage. So we're going to cover that too. How to clean up all of your channels, right? So when you start to get those leads, your sales managers, you feel like this guy, just a little bit disappointed in the quality of leads and they don't convert and most of the channels aren't working, right? But we really want you to start feeling like this guy. Like when you get those new leads coming in, you're like, whoa, sweet, I'm going to hit my quota for the month or I'm going to hit my revenue targets. So let's kind of like level set. What is a lead anyway, right? So we have MQLs and SQLs. Really, they're just like better quality leads, not so good quality leads, right? So and MQLs, it's top of funnel. It's like you probably got them because they signed up for an ebook or they signed up for something. And you know what? Honestly, they're not interested in buying your product or service. They really just wanted that ebook. So we call those marketing qualified leads. The reality is most businesses should not be calling those and wasting sales efforts on those. At the other end is the sales qualified leads. Those are like the bottom of the funnel. Those are people who are more interested in your service, right? They've done some research, they want to book a demo, or they want to kind of move forward in your sales cycle. And MQLs, you got to think about it. It's marketing qualified, and that really should stay in the marketing side of the house. It really shouldn't be bumping over and having your salespeople call them. They shouldn't. They're not that great of quality. So if you kind of focus and start switching that, hey, we're sending a lot of MQLs to our sales team, let's go ahead and pivot that and get the expectation that you're going to send a lot less leads over that are better quality, right? So we're using less human resources. This is actually something that's really good to level set against too. A lot of people think it's really hard to go from like 7 million to 12 million, right? But the reality is it's actually really hard to go from zero, your first million, and then from 1 million to 2 million. That's what looks easy versus like, a $4 or $5 million jump. But it's actually a lot harder to grow when you don't have a lot of momentum. That means a lot of your marketing materials have to be created from scratch. That means you haven't probably quite figured out your whole sales process yet, or who your value prop is and who you're talking to. So it's actually a much bigger lift if you're a smaller organization. Let's kind of start going through lead gen, right? That's why you're here. You want to get some real things to do. Ultimately, we're trying to do this guy right here in a digital world, right? And drive people to your business. We want to get people to notice you and think about your business. There's 6 stages of a buyer's journey. So I'm going to take a step back before I start to give tactics. I want to align the tactics to where the prospective customer is in their buying process, right? Because if you're sending the wrong message to the wrong people, then it's all going to fall flat. So we kind of start with an area of awareness. Does the general public know that our service or product exists? Then there's some interest, and then there's instigation. You're kind of making them a little bit uncomfortable if they don't go with you, right? And then there's consideration, purchase, and then satisfaction. And then you have things like advocacy and, all the things that come with that, with loyalty and lifetime value. So we often think there's a sales funnel that goes this way, right? We first have to get people, we get most people in awareness bucket, and then we go into consideration. But the reality is the journey is more like this. This is from HubSpot. It's very disjointed. A lot of times they don't connect. Sometimes people come in and out of a sales cycle. There is no clear path, whether it's a funnel or a straight line. It's really this more disjointed, kind of crazy path. And as marketers, it's really hard for us to kind of know what to do with that, right? But also as marketers, we have to realize that we're selling to humans, even in a B2B setting. And these humans have bills. These humans have a lot of priorities that are not necessarily about buying your product. We have, I think, 60 plus meetings a month and 120 emails a day or something crazy like that. We're really overscheduled. The average person isn't going to give your business the time of day that it deserves, right? And then, we have to also remember that our end customers have their own lives, right? They're not robots that just want to do their job to the best of their abilities. They want to enjoy life, and their, work is just a part of their life. So let's kind of talk about trigger events. So this is really powerful. No one buys for the sake of buying, right? There's something that triggered that reason that they're now looking to solve some problem, right? So the trigger event could be things like emotions. It could be financial. It could be just a pain point in the business. Like let's say you're getting leads and you're inconsistently following up with them, or your CRM is so hard to use that your sales staff just doesn't use anything and they're all in Outlook and you have no visibility to the business and you're not really able to do that. That's a pain point, right? So you're losing money, you don't really know what to do about it. Then you start to figure out where do you go from that point on, right? So now you're starting to maybe passively look for something. And that in that passive look is an education component. You need to educate your buyers to be better consumers, right? So HubSpot Academy and HubSpot in general does an amazing, epic job with this, right? They're in the education world. So what they're trying to do is make you a much better consumer, because you can't buy a CRM and get it to work unless you really understand the power of it and how to use it and how to run your business better. So they're really in that component of education. So those leads are generally cheaper, right? Because they're passively looking. They're not going to close right away. They're going to need some lead nurturing, and we'll go through that in a moment. And then you get people who are actively looking. Those are the people who type into Google, I need a CRM now, right? And those leads are generally much more expensive, but those people are lower down on the funnel. There are also people that generally, while they do want to buy soon, they may already have 2 or 3 people in mind. So it's sometimes hard to get your business in that 2 or 3 when they've already kind of honed in on that. When you do start to look at your pain points and what you're solving for, you really have to make sure that you have a lead nurturing strategy and a remessaging strategy, all that we'll cover today as a part of this trigger event. Otherwise, you're just not really going to be able to sell to your optimal ability if you don't think of all these things. So we're going to go through that. Our job as marketers and as businesses is to clear the path forward for a customer. They have a pain point. They need a solution. We want to make it as easy as it can be to fix that problem, right? And whether it's us or maybe a different kind of app or competitor, that's okay. We're here to help them make it easier. And in turn, if we make their lives a little bit easier, they may refer us out to somebody, even if they don't buy us, right? They're like, oh, I really like this product. It didn't work for me, but you should look at it. This is from Gartner, and they have some really amazing stuff on B2B. If you haven't checked them out, you should. They have some great white papers. Distribution of buying groups, time, right? Like we often think, okay, a person, when they're looking for a new product or service, they're going to spend most of their time talking to reps and kind of looking. The reality is out of 100% of their time, they only spend 17% of our time talking to someone, a rep at your business. The other time is their 27% is researching independently. You need to make sure your business is able to be researched independently and is actually going to help move that prospect forward to encourage them and add enough value that they want to get on the phone with a rep with that 17%. Meeting with buying groups, research, again, offline, asking friends for referrals, that's all in there, but only 17% is going to be spent with reps. And that's across, let's say they're scouting out 5 or 6 vendors. That's across all of those vendors, not just yours product. Before we even go into anything else, right? So before we go into lead generation tactics, the key thing that you need to take away from here is that your website needs to become a 24-hour sales machine, right? Because look, there's 2 of me, right? So, oops, that way. Okay, so here I am giving a little thing about a leaky bucket. If you're sending all this paid media and SEO and everything over to your website and your website just isn't converting the way that it should because it's not optimized in all these different ways that I'll talk about, then it's going to be a leaky bucket. You're just putting paid media and SEO dollars, and you're just throwing more and more dollars into that bucket, and they're just going to lead out anyway. So really, really important that we start to plug that leaky bucket before you do anything else. How to optimize your website for B2B. So these are some of the things I talked about. You need to have strong call to actions, but the call to actions don't necessarily need to be like book a demo. That's a much lower funnel. That person has to be pretty sold on your product or service to book a demo. People have like a lot of phone anxiety and sales anxiety nowadays. So you really have to make sure that they get the gist of your product, they understand your pricing, there's a lot of transparency, and they feel good about it in order as the next step to book that call, right? But calls to action might be calls to download a white paper or an ebook or watch a video. So it doesn't need to be straight call to action and book a demo. That's often the wrong time to have that strong call to action. People just leave because they don't understand the value of your service or product yet. And they got to your site and they're like, I'm gonna go. And that's where that 95% comes in, right? So you also have to have SEO. You have to have clarity of message. I worked with one B2B client and they really wanted to be known for something vague and just didn't make any sense. And they're like, well, we want to create our brand so that we create that term. And I'm like, okay, but there's no clarity. People do not clearly understand what you offer. And that is struggling for people. So if they don't understand what you really offer, you don't understand what pain points you're solving for, they're just going to go. That's an area of friction. So really having clarity of message and specifically what pain points you're solving for is so key. So make sure your website, take a step back and be like, I get it. I get what they do. And I get that I would need that, right? Also, social proof is so important. Let's talk about some content marketing. Who are you selling to? You got to talk to your customers. I know, gross. No. But it's really hard to talk to your customers. But one of those things is we need to understand what buying jobs they have, right? And then what kind of content would help them become better buyers? What kind of content would make their jobs easier? What kind of content? It could be video. It could be, here's just a checklist that we created. If you're in the awareness stage, it might be tip sheets, checklists, white papers, guides, podcasts, SEO research, newsletters, press releases, lead magnets. That's the kind of stuff where you're in the education area of your cycle. And then you start to go into consideration. This is more webinars and videos and case studies and chat. But this is when they really have a sense they've been able to name their problem. So that means like let's go back to that CRM example. My sales reps are not being consistently following up with people, and I have no way to monitor that. That's in the education space. You kind of know you have a sales problem, but you haven't quite named that it's because of your CRM. You might still think it might be your sales manager, or you're still naming the problem. When you start to get into consideration right here, that's when you start to say, I think it's a CRM thing and probably also a sales management thing. But that's when you've named your problem, and now you're starting to kind of hone in on which CRM would be better for me or which next step would be better for me. And then the decision cycle is when you start to, that's finally when you get to demos and consultations and estimates and spec sheets. That's really when it's your job to lose that sale because they've honed in on like 2 or 3 people and now they're moving forward. Now in today's day and age, marketing has to have such a bigger lift. A lot of times B2B are disproportionate sales and very light in marketing. And you'll see in here, the majority of buyers now want to be self-served. So if they want to be self-served, your marketing has to be on point. You have to have a lot of education and you have to really move people from here to here without necessarily involving a salesperson. So you got to start thinking about that in your business. And I just shared this from SEMrush. The top performing content types are how-to guides, landing pages, infographics, checklists, ebooks. That's why you see so many. They're so prolific. But they're also really helpful because it's part of education, right? One thing when you're thinking about your business and your marketing and your content strategy, lead with benefits. We hear this all the time, but I'm going to give you a clear example. Let's say you're selling an alarm clock on Amazon, right? Automatic time syncing, flexible brightness control, sleep tunes. I've seen a lot of SaaS company websites, and that's kind of what they speak to. But really, you should be kind of saying, stop sleeping in, achieve more of your day, accomplish your goals. We don't have an alarm clock because we want all these other things. Those are important. Brightness control actually is really important, especially in hotel rooms. But we really want to get up early and start working out and finally lose that 5,000 pounds that we gained in COVID, right? So that's the kind of stuff. That's the pain point, right? That's what we're really solving for, is to make this person more productive in their day. This is a huge opportunity that I wanted to share with you to get you thinking. This is again from SEMrush, but in the middle it says 11% evaluate their content marketing strategy as excellent. Just 11%, right? So that's like 89% of an opportunity for you and your business. Create a really great content strategy. SEMrush actually has a great content strategy also. That's why I'm sharing it. So, but this is really could be an opportunity for you to create really, really exceptional content that people want to share in their webinars. People want to share virally, but very few people are doing it. So this is your chance. One thing too, and I'm going to show you this, is 4 ways to repurpose content. But I want to give you this example right here. This is just a blog post on our website. And in that blog post, we have many infographics. We have a variety of things. We have videos. We have everything else in this video. So what I wanted to show you is you create, let me make me smaller and move me. Hi. You create like content, like a big long blog post, right? And from that content, then you can start creating videos and social posts and GIFs and infographics. And then you start to repurpose that and use that across social media and all these other things. And you'll see I'm going to belabor the value of video in just a moment. So that's another thing I want you to take away from this video is like, we need more video. We need more video. But you're going to take pieces, like even this webinar, for example, it's super long, and then I'm going to truncate the webinar into small little vignettes and then push them back out on social media. So I am going to repurpose this webinar multiple times in different ways, and that's a part of your strategy. You also, when you're doing your content strategy, make sure you think about how you're going to distribute the content. A lot of times people will say, I'm going to spend $4,000 on content, but sometimes distribution of content is even more money. So that might be $20,000, depending on how good or what channels you're using. So you really have to put distribution in there and think about how you're going to repurpose that content and have enough budget for it. As B2B, I wanted to hone in on this. Most B2B do not do enough branding. What's your brand story? Why should people care, right? A great story is true, not necessarily because it's factual, but because it's consistent and authentic, right? What is your brand story? What are you trying to get across? How do you connect people with who you are and what you're doing? Here, I kind of mentioned be authentic, know your audience, share the problem you solve. Be really clear with this is the problem that you solve for people. Get their attention, right? We get like 3,000 messages a day or something, but bananas like that. And you can't pay attention to every single message. But you're like, as a human, kind of going, okay, that's interesting to me because that's kind of hitting home in some way. So you have to hit home, right? I wanted to share, a lot of times I hear people say, oh, I did Google ads or I did Facebook ads or Instagram or LinkedIn ads and they didn't really work for me. Well, I wanted to say nearly 50% of ad effectiveness is driven by creative. If your creative is kind of lame, then that might be what's driving the poor performance of that channel. And what happens is when people don't spend enough money or time on their creative, it just becomes a wealth transfer from your pocket, right? Where's my hand? There you go. Where's my hand to Google and Facebook's pocket? And we don't want to do that. They're wealthy enough. They don't need your money. So let's get creative about how you communicate your message and really in a way that makes sense. And if you needed some ideas on creativity, type in sandwich.io or .co. It's one of those endings. They do some awesome videos. All right, let's talk about gated content because this has become a little bit controversial. And, there's a time and a place for gated content and there's a time to ungate your content. I know you want to own the relationship and you want to own the experience. But what happens is we're gaining so much content now that people are just leaving without engaging at all. And we don't want that. We want people to watch your webinars or whatever you have, videos. We want them to read your blog posts without being gated. But you do want to gate some of your content that's really, high value, like an ebook or something like that, because you do want to lead nurture them, right? So we're going to come into lead nurturing right now. So lead nurturing is so important and often missed by every single business I've ever worked with. So I think I mentioned really briefly, I'm a fractional CMO for a number of companies. We're an agency, and every time I come in, I'm always like so underwhelmed by everyone's lead nurturing. Only about it's really like 1 to 3% of buyers are really ready to buy right now. That means like 97% aren't ready to buy now, but everyone's sales process is so built on now. We burn and churn, right? So we call right away and the person doesn't seem engaged and the salesperson moves on. That's true, but marketing really should keep building value. And if you have a lot of people like unsubscribing from your lead nurturing, it's because your communications are very self-serving. They're talking about you all the time and your benefits and why they should care. But if you're, again, adding value to that person, whatever value is to that buyer, that's where talking to your customers is so important. But whatever that value is, if you start to lead with more value, you're going to be welcomed in their email box and they're going to keep watching it. If you think about like drift, they've coined, conversational marketing, but a lot of people in the industry talk about drift because most of their focus is not about their product at all. They mostly talk about marketing and strategy and demand gen and all these other topics. But because they've done such a good job educating, we all know what that product is called. So it's really, really important to think about it that way. This is funny. This is actually cannabis growing. So lead nurturing. You got to nurture. I can't say that enough, right? If we go back, you are not there. There's gold in your email database. And we'll talk about some of the stats in a second. Gartner, back to Gartner, kind of mentioned them a little while ago. The buying job, a B2B buyer goes through a set of tasks, right? In order to buy, it's this way, right? They have to problem identification. We need to do something. This is a problem. Solution exploration. What's out there to solve the problem, right? Requirement building. Once you start getting a little bit smarter, then you start to understand what are the requirements that our business needs. Sometimes we don't even know that when we're going into it. And then supplier selection. But generally, if you are not found in that solution exploration, you're generally not going to make it into the supplier selection process, right? You got booted out. And even if they found you at the last minute, most people, because they're living their lives, are not going to add you into the process. They're like, we already have 3 good people. We're good. We're good. And you're like, but mine is better. And they're like, I got to go to a wedding. I don't care. So that's why it's really, really important to get in front of people earlier in the process, right? And then there's like consensus creation. That's like when they go back to their teams and they talk through everything, right? And then they meet internally. So it's really important that you understand their buying job and how you could interject your solution into that process, right? So this is also from Gartner, and this is like how complicated a B2B process is, right? There's CEO turnover that changes things. You start with problem identification, you do research, you're overwhelmed, you do web searches, you're asking friends, peer discussions, you're like on LinkedIn, be like, does anybody know anything here? And I'll cover that in just a second too. We call that dark social. So it's really complicated, and because it's complicated, it's hard to know how to give people the right pieces of content. I totally get it. It's super hard. Here are some great questions to kind of ask to get closer to a solution, right? So like, okay, we're overwhelmed. There's so much to do. But let's ask, does the content enable a specific buying job? So this is like a good checklist to see if your content is good, and should you be publishing this, and can your salespeople be sharing it? Gartner had this really interesting philosophy that salespeople are now going to become content curators. And what does that mean, right? So what they said in one of their white papers is that the marketing team or whoever in collaboration creates some really great either videos and content, however that content is created. And that salesperson's job is there to curate the right pieces of content for what that buyer is in their journey or in their questioning or in their specific business. And so the salesperson is less of a salesperson and more of a content creator, a content like a curator. And that's going to be a different hiring philosophy, a different training philosophy, and definitely you're going to need a lot different of a marketing and sales approach to that. So something to think about is, where's the industry going, and is that something we need to start looking at for our business? And if you do, your marketing, like before, it used to be B2B businesses would spend like 30% of their expense on marketing and 70% on sales. That may have to start getting flipped, where you're spending 70% of that on on marketing, and 30% on sales, right? So the lift of marketing is going to be much higher, but they also can't keep sending you these MQL leads, right? They have to send you really good buyer-ready leads, or sales-ready leads, sorry. Okay, so then is the content easy for the customer to use quickly and effectively? Is the content relevant to a majority of your buyers? Does the content support the completion of a buying job? So once you understand through your stakeholders and your customers, what is their buying job? How can I better enable you to make a better decision? Then you can start creating those appropriate pieces. But that you can't go without asking those questions. Or if you just happen to know from your sales team, lean on them. Your sales team really knows a lot, so ask them. This is something I'm just going to touch on for a second just because we have so much to cover. Personalization, it's not about first name, last name. Like when you send out your emails or your websites, it's really about driving the right content to the right person at the right process, at the right time in their sales process. So this is where the industry is going, and it might look different for every single business, but keep an eye out for this because this is something your business is going to need to do. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Let's talk about SEO, right? Like are you tired of hearing about SEO? So, okay, SEO is cost effective. We all know that. And there's this thing called like the plateau of despair. That's what I named it. So that's where you do all this work, you do all this work, you do all this work, and you want to cry because you don't really see it. And then it really starts to kind of go up pretty aggressively. So you need to create a lot of content for that. But this is something when I hear a lot of people say, oh, SEO doesn't work or email doesn't work for me. Yeah, probably because like here, companies spend 76% of their budget targeting the wrong keywords. So if SEO isn't working for you, you really need an audit. And it's not just an audit of your technical stuff on your website, which is really important, but it's also an audit of keyword intent. How well is this keyword working for you? And what is the intent? And are you driving them to the right piece of content based on that intent? Picking the right keywords and the right content strategy is huge. And that's really where everybody goes wrong. So if it's not working for you, probably a lot of that. There's also things like informational, navigational, commercial, and transactional keywords, right? So you have to have a little bit of all of them. Informational is like when the consumer, as I mentioned, is still just looking for, look, I made myself so much bigger. When the person is still just looking to identify naming their problem, right? My back hurts when I wake up, but I'm not exactly sure why. Is it my pillow? Is it my mattress? Is it because I'm out of shape? Is it the stress of my job, right? They can't quite name what it is, but they have a problem and they've named the problem, but they don't know the solution yet. Then you start to get into like navigational, commercial, and then transactional. That's really where most people focus on. It's the bottom of the funnel. It's the person is buy running shoes or buy Nikes, right? They already did all their research. They already know what they want. And now they're just kind of finding the best price, the best option. But if you didn't show up in the informational phase, you're going to have a really hard time in the transactional phase to get those keywords and to get people to convert. Okay, I'm going to take a breather because that is like so much. I threw so much at you. I probably have gone too fast. My apologies. We do have an amazing blog that is a compliment, right? Because we're to this. So if you also need to read it, we have that blog for you. It's on our website, ellisonellery.com, and it's lead generation. So be sure to check that out. All right, let's cover email. I also hear through a lot of businesses, email doesn't do what it should be doing for us. Mind you, for every dollar you spend on email marketing, you should expect about a $42 return. I'm a fractional CMO for a big university, and I'm like, hey, you guys only have one resource in email. Maybe you need a lot more because it's a really amazing channel, even though people often think it isn't. So let me kind of walk through some other stats. And I do want to point out, I have the word but right above me. So wrong. Welcome emails have a strong potential. So when somebody fills out a lead form on your website, the very first email they're ever going to receive, your welcome email or, please do not squander it with it being we got your info, someone's going to contact you shortly. Oh, right? And the average welcome email is open at 82%. The average email overall is open at 21%. So if you squander that first email with a transactional email, poo-poo on you. So we're gonna take that away from this webinar is that we need to create a really kick-ass first email. And that builds value, that gets people hooked into your product. And you don't have to sell them right away. You just have to show them value for why they need to open the next email. It's kind of like dating, right? Each date you're trying to get them to go on the next date. You're not necessarily on the first date trying to get to marry them. You're just trying to convince them that you're worthy of going on a second date with, right? So that's what we're doing here. And then I also hear so many times from B2B is we can't use emojis. We really have to be as like frank and proper as we can in emails because we're a business. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not selling to a business. You're selling to a person. So 56% of brands using emojis in the subject line have a higher open rate. Remember that you're talking to a human that's getting engaged, that's getting married, that has kids, that really just somewhat wants to be not bored to death with your communications, right? So this person right here is your prospective buyer. They have their own life. They're doing their own things. I hope she doesn't kick me. But you have to get through, she's thinking about other stuff, right? She's not thinking about your business. And she's really not probably even thinking about her job that much. She's thinking about her life outside of her job. Make her life easier, right? So she can go back doing the things that she really wants to do with her life. This is a cool tactic. If you haven't tried it, you should definitely try it. Let's say you have a big email list and a lot of people have unsubscribed because, again, you weren't adding any value to their lives, right? You're just talking about you. You could still win these customers back. So you get your unsubscribe list and you upload them to Facebook as a customer file and you run remessaging ads. Go get them excited about your product. Go talk to them about something else. They were once interested in your product or service. They may still be interested in it. They're just not interested in getting emails from you. So don't completely throw those people away. Some people are really like aggressively unsubscribers. So this is your chance to still sell them and still talk about your product and service. Okay, so Privy is a email provider for e-commerce and they send some great emails. So I totally recommend signing up for their newsletter. It's impressive. But here's one, 15 ways to deliver holiday sales. There's an emoji. And then they did these whole things about influencers and they asked people, like they pulled these from, I think, Instagram, and they said this influencer has 3.8 million followers and they asked the question, are your Christmas shopping done yet? And 76% said no. So they took this as a point of insight to share back to their prospective customer base and said, hey, there's a ton, and look how they spell ton, right? So for your B2B people that want to be boring, of opportunity for you to bring sales this holiday season. So this is coming to me on December 8th. Doing is they found a little piece of insight, they're sharing it back out to their audience, and then they're driving them to a new piece of content. They're not selling them, they're selling the content. That's exactly why I put together these 15 ideas that will help you drive sales this holiday season. They're driving them to a new piece of content. Now this is an email on December 16th. Now they're promoting themselves, right? So celebrate the holiday. We're offering you 50% off the first month. Again, emoji in the subject line, even emojis in the email. They're not doing this fancy HTML. They're just doing text, right? And it says follow these steps here to get the offer. And then a PS is so powerful. When you upgrade a growth plan, you receive one free one-on-one coaching call with Privy Coach, right? Those are highlighted because I did a search in my email box for them. So that's why they're highlighted. Here's the last one, and because email is so powerful, I wanted to hit home on this a little bit. Here's another email. It's October 29th from them, and they said, they're using the word free, and I'm going to show you the power of free in a moment. Your Black Friday playbook here, free, and it says get your copy of your book, and then there's a graphic that says the secret of getting 3 million monthly views on Pinterest and driving 600 in revenue every week. It's a 6-day boot camp you need to prep for Black Friday. So they're offering a 6-day boot camp. And then this is the piece that they're driving for. So I took a quick little video of this. And there's also an option to download it. But if you look, this is a really nice piece that they're driving to, right? So there's a lot of insights. There's a lot of great things in here. And then it's easy to download it. Email subject lines, words that drive action. So when I hear people say email doesn't work for me, it's probably because they're just not well optimizing it. So let's look at here. Free increased by open rates on your subject line by 34%. Limited, last chance. Those are all words to kind of share a limited supply, right? So urgency. Urgency always really works. So think about how you could have urgency in your communications. 2022, because those are like predictions, what's coming up, right? This email is a whole 2022 prediction of what you should be working on for next year. And then this versus that, right? So any kind of insights your business can share and bubble up, those are the kind of insights people want to read about, right? So they can get a little bit smarter without having to do a lot of work. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a lot of slides about video, and video is amazing. And at the end of this video, I want you to go back to your CEO. I want you to go back to your team and be like, oh, we need to do so much more video. Video needs to be a bigger part of your strategy. See, just mentioned. Viewers can retain 95% of they watch in videos and only 10% what they read in text. So if you really want someone to retain what you gave them, right? Because that's the whole point of communication. You're not just speaking into the wind here. Cisco also predicts by next year, which is just coming up, online videos will make up 82% all consumer traffic. I'm really curious to see how true this prediction ended up. I think they did it a year or two ago. So I'm really curious to see where that all ends. Look at me. Containing a video get 48% more views compared to a blog without video. That's really powerful. So I wanted to show you this one right here. It's another blog post that we did. If you're interested in LinkedIn ads, definitely check this blog post out. But then we also did this video as a supplement to the blog post. And we have infographics and we have images. Make your blogs engaging. I also have a CTA in here, right? To drive them not to do a demo with me as my agency, but to actually drive them to the next thing, which is a sales sheet. So if you need any sales tips, that sales sheet is amazing and you should definitely download it. We use video in your social media to get more engagement and have longer view times. And that you're rewarded for with higher engagement. So that means if people are engaging and watching your stuff and kind of like sharing it more, then the social media algorithms will then show your content more organically to your subscribers or likes or followers or whatever. So you really have to earn that constant engagement. And video is a really good way to do that. I don't know if you know this in B2B, but 42% of your B2B buyers are millennials, which is bananas, right? Millennials are not that young anymore. They're like coming up on they're like 41, the older millennials, right? So, but 50% of millennials and Gen Z that they could not live without videos. They can't live without it. So you got to really think about that and who they are and how they're becoming your buyers in a B2B setting. Videos can help increase conversion rates by 80% when implemented on a landing page. I'm with her. That's bananas, and the cost of media is only astronomically going up on LinkedIn ads, Google, Facebook, all that stuff. So this is your way that you could still make it to be a profitable channel for you, is by adding really good videos to your site. Customers are more than 84% more likely to purchase. I know. You need a product video. Here are just some tools that you could use: Descript, Loom, Animoto, Canva. For sales, video is Hippo and Vineyard. If you need like freelancers, Fiverr and Upwork are great. And then right above me is StreamYard, where you can start streaming more live videos, which is pretty powerful stuff. All right, we're gonna take a moment because we have covered so much, like too much probably, and you probably have dropped off. And if you haven't dropped off, you're awesome. I am pretty wisdomous, right? So what kind of thought leader are you? It is super important that your CEO or whoever else becomes a thought leader on your behalf. They're informed opinion leaders and they're go-to people in their field. So you want that. You want to start sharing your thoughts. Be considerate of your readers' attention and create content that is valuable. Back to your email that you create. Is this adding to the world? I had someone write a blog post for me, a team member, and she sent it to me and I was like, this is kind of fluffy. It doesn't really have anything of value in here. So I made her go and rewrite it, because it doesn't leave it wasn't high value. So I wouldn't publish it on my blog because I'm not publishing anything that's not super high value. And you have to kind of take that mindset too. Sticks to versatile messaging that is widely applicable. Stay up to date on topics and relevant, like kind of stay newsworthy. Also, it really helps, thought leadership helps with hiring. If your CEO is like killing it on LinkedIn, that's just creating more passion on the networks for you. And you're just going to potentially just drive a much, much better candidate too. So keep all of that in mind, that thought leadership isn't just for sales, but it's also for hiring better talent. A lot of times people ask me like, oh, what do I do on LinkedIn if I'm just starting out? She did a great little post here. Decide what topic you want to be known for. Post content 1 time per day on a specific topic. Comment under large accounts 5 times a day. At 6 months, go 2 times per day with reposting. Start a newsletter at 5,000 followers and follow this for 12 months. There's even things that show that you probably want multiple people in your organization to be doing this on your behalf, not just you, right? More is better in some ways if it's good content. And that kind of leads us to employee advocacy. When I just said more is better, content shared by employees, it gets 8 times more engagement than if a brand shares it. So for example, on our Else and Ellery LinkedIn profile, we share content and then we all reshare it as a part of just how we all do business on our own pages. So that's really, really important. And that content really has a chance to live on much better than if I just posted it on our agency site. Oh, look, I think I'm blocking it. Gives customers a positive look, right? Build stuff. And you don't want just your employees to share blogs, but you want them to do commentary. You want them to write up more thoughtful than just like the obligatory share your content and be like, I checked it off, I did it. If your employees are that disconnected that they can't like do a little bit more thought leadership, then you really need to see if those are the right employees for you too. So it's kind of a good gut check on their level of commitment to the business. Ultimately, employee advocacy help you bring in more qualified leads. But as a part of that employee advocacy, don't just like keep asking everyone to do more and more. Take a little bit off their plate. Understand how incredibly important employee advocacy is and say, you know what? I want you to block out 8 hours a week to do this. You know, maybe that's only 2 or 3 employees, but you have to give them the space and time to do it. Don't ask them to do it on top of other things. You got to take some things off. Otherwise, they're not going to do it very well and they're going to get burned out and you're going to lose them, or they're just going to get disengaged. So You got to think about all that. Turning your employees into advocates. On LinkedIn, it says LinkedIn data shows that employees typically have a 10 times the number of connections. So like if your business has 1,000 connections, your employee may have 2,000 or 3,000 connections, right? So you really want to lean in on those employees. All right, reducing friction, the $300 million button. There's an example of a company that changed their button and they were able to drive 300 million more in revenue. So it's a great story. It's going to be up on our website and YouTube channel. So make sure you check that one out. 87% of B2B tech buyers want self-service options. So that means your marketing and everything else, I already mentioned this, but I wanted to bring it home one more time, that your website has to do all the selling, and just assume that you don't have salespeople. And you still want to keep your salespeople, but if your website, if you almost treat it as if you don't have a salesperson, then we can get you more demo leads and more sales connections with your salespeople. A lot of times on websites, I kind of mentioned this earlier, your website has to be like a 24-hour sales machine. Well, in order to be a 24-hour sales machine, you have to remove hurdles. Don't make it so hard for someone to buy. There's one company, it was like an SEO type of tool. I filled out 4 demo requests for them. I went to their Twitter. I could not get a hold of these people. I wanted a freaking demo. I wanted to see if I could buy this. I needed to buy something ASAP. I eventually on Twitter, somebody reached out to me a week later. I jumped over every hoop. In the end, guess what I did? I ended up buying a different service, right? And I'm happy with the service. And now the salespeople are really aggressively following up with me. And I'm like, you completely pooped the bed, you guys. Also, their pricing was super confusing. And I know there's a lot of times in SaaS where you want to pay per usage, but then like if you go down usage, you don't save any money. Your pricing sucks. You need to reevaluate it, transparency, and remove the hurdles. I don't sign up for some products because I just can't figure out your pricing, and you can't clearly articulate it to me. And I just, you know what, this is more work. So really consider all those hurdles and work with your team to remove those hurdles. You'll sell more, you'll make more money, and maybe you'll make a little bit less on that specific customer, but think about all the ones you've lost. You have to do it. Okay, so don't optimize for conversions, optimize for revenue. I actually see this in my fractional CMO role because I get to see under people their finance. And I see a lot of times we're optimizing for the wrong thing. Optimize for revenue. So what does that mean? Let's say you spent $1,000 on a sale on Facebook, with everything involved. But you only made $1,000. You're like, well, we're not going to do that because we broke even, right? What if that customer then sends you 4 more customers? Or if that customer has a lifetime value of $30,000, then that $1,000 it took to acquire that customer was completely worth it. So you really have to think about lifetime value and optimize your spend according to which channels are driving the most revenue for the longest period. Another thing you have to do is just look at growing the business and scaling the business. And one channel, like if you start to scale out Facebook, it just doesn't work as well as it did when you kept it really small. So a lot of things to consider in this one. But this is ultimately, if you do all these things, right, you're going to grow. And it's going to feel at first, a few months where you don't feel like you're really growing the right way and you're just really unhappy. That's all part of it. But if you do the right things and you're really optimizing the channels, they should all work for you. We kind of touched on this one before, but optimizing your website, working on SEO, make sure your site is optimized for mobile. Most visitors now, even on a B2B side, are visiting your site via mobile. And we're going to cover A/B testing in just a second. So also, create offer-specific landing pages. This is so, so important. That just means that each of your specific services should have its own landing page. And in that landing page, it should really speak to the value that that service is bringing people. A lot of times we start to kind of not put the same amount of thought and care into each individual service. But if it's an a la carte or it's something that people can buy, you darn well should optimize those, right? Because that's revenue opportunities. Okay, the benefits of A/B. So I kind of mentioned a number of times the cost of everything is going up, about that. The next thing that you have to do is really optimize those landing pages and sales experiences to get more of those visitors into your funnel and hopefully nurturing them. So each time you have to optimize it. Give people a big hug and take care of them so that they can, you can date them so you can marry them. But optimizing, a percentage increase of Dell's conversion rate upon testing landing pages. 32% based on button color. I'll be honest, button color is important, but not as important as it used to be. But it means that you should still test your call to actions because you might have really poor call to actions. And by testing them, you might improve them, right? Sometimes you great call to actions and you only see a marginal improvement. But one thing I really want to point out here is most people don't have enough time. I know companies that spend $65 million a year in media expenses and they don't do enough testing. And I'm like, all you're doing is a wealth transfer from one to the other. In this case, 20% Google and Bing controlled experiments that yield positive results. That means 80% of the tests, actually don't do anything or hurt. So don't think that you're going to hit it out of the ballpark every time. You're probably going to have a 20% success rate and an 80% fail rate. That just actually kind of qualifies and makes you feel good that what you have is good. But it could always be better. So once you hit, sometimes those 20% could really skyrocket and really be amazing for you. So don't lose heart. All right, CTAs. This is a CTA call. It's a call to action. This is on Privy and one line CTA, right? All you have to do is give me your email and you get this great 30-page jam-packed state of Shopify report. They did a lot of research. They put a lot of time and care into it, and they're just getting an email, right? Here's another one. In their email blogs, they have this like get the best content on e-commerce. So they're asking you to opt into their newsletter right here. So one line. If you do the one line, do not call, you can't call the person, right? But you have to create a lead nurturing cycle that makes sense. You have to create really good content because otherwise it was all for nothing. Here's one of our CTAs. There's actually studies that show a 3 or sometimes 4 question CTA works better than a 3 question CTA or a 2 question, but it does. But you want to test that. This is one of ours, and we're giving you something, and we're having it gated in this case. All right. So if you do all these things, you're going to be like her. Let's all grab the money. Right? That's when we really start to hit our revenue targets. Here's a lead magnet. They're really important that you start creating them. You got to find out what's valuable. In this case, we have a lead generation checklist. So all the things we talked about today are in that checklist. So be sure to download it. You made it this far. Let's do a little dance, right? Kind of shake it up because you've done so much listening. We're almost done. I'm going to cover one really, really important area soon. Retargeting ads cross-channel, right? So I'm talking about like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. This works. Why you want to retarget. I often hear B2B going, well, my customers, they're really hard. We can't find them on Facebook. That's true. You probably in some cases can't. But let me show you how you can find them on Facebook, even though you think you can't. Retargeting makes it 70% more likely to convert previous visitors into paying customers. I'm going to show you what that means in case you're not very familiar. Retargeting can result in a 147% increase in average conversion rate when properly integrated. And retargeting ads has found an increase your brand search results by 500%. That's huge, right? We all want more brand visitors. This is one of the ways to do it. So how retargeting works. A person comes to your website, right? They came to your website and they left your website because 95% of visitors are coming and leaving your website, right? Like filling out your form or making a purchase. Then they go to Facebook to see what their grandma's doing, to see what their cousins are doing, and they see your ads. We did not have to go find them. We did not have to go and get any kind of audiences or anything. We were able to find them because they activated a pixel on your account. So we know they visited the site, and then only the people who visited your site, we serve this ad to. Prospect likes and product likes your ads if it's great ads. And then they come back to your landing page or website, and then you're hopefully able to convert them. Or you just kind of still build the value to them over time. So that's what I'm talking about. And how it really works is the guide to remarketing ads. You have to install, there's a Facebook pixel and an Instagram pixel and a Google one. You put it on your website, and then you create some killer ads, and only to the people who have activated that pixel. So not to belabor something, which I totally am, 60% higher conversion rates. You want to drive cheaper traffic through Facebook, through Instagram, through YouTube. You want to drive that cheaper click and then remessage them. And this is where you're going to see all of the amazing results and the value and everything else. It's through this channel, remessaging. All right, let's talk about the power of retargeting. I know I already mentioned it, but you have 60% higher conversion rates and a 30% had a positive reaction to ads. A 400% boost in ad responses. So if there's anything I could tell you and you leave here with, it's videos, retargeting, and email, right? But you really have to do those channels really well. But these hopefully are inspiring you to kind of focus on them. All right, so you really have to go into social media with intentionality. And I know a lot of times you really should just kind of pick a few. social platforms and do them really well. Obviously, LinkedIn is the one that you really want to focus on, and then you have your other ones, right? So like Instagram might not be where you need to focus on or where your audience is. So you get to pick and choose which ones make the most sense. All right, so moving on to account-based marketing, ABM. ABM is really a lot like this guy right here, right? So he is, let's kind of go a little bit bigger. ABM is really, really about just honing in on a few very specialized customers, treating them really, really well. At the enterprise level is generally when you want an ABM strategy. And how do you really hone in on making these folks feel better? There's a lot of tools out there, and to be honest, you probably don't need most of them. You will need some form of a CRM because everybody needs a CRM. You're probably going to need something like Sales Navigator, but there's also Zoom Info. Lucia is really cool, and then HubSpot Sales Hub. We're a HubSpot provider, so we're really big fans of HubSpot. We also use HubSpot website visitors. So if you come to our site, our HubSpot is able to capture you and tell us a little bit more about you. And then it's not that I creepily know that you're there and then all of a sudden I start reaching out to you, but it does start to help inform, who is more of a sought after prospect and who's more interested. So these are some really big tools related to ABM. And, you kind of pick and choose, but first start small. You really don't need a lot of sophisticated technology. To be honest, most people buy this stuff and never really incorporate most of it. So you really have to come in with a very strong ABM strategy. Who are you targeting? How are you going to create that sales enablement materials? And then you can think about and focus on the tools later. But first, strategy. All right, back to social media. So I mentioned LinkedIn. 92% of B2B marketers use LinkedIn. But the majority, while they use it and they have a LinkedIn profile, most people are not on LinkedIn. It's very sad. I think only like 14% of users are really on LinkedIn often, and they're mostly like agencies or salespeople that really need to buy something. Your prospects probably really aren't on LinkedIn the way that we would like them to be, but it's a great channel nonetheless. How to use social media to get B2B leads. There's some do's and don'ts. So you do want to make posts that are like consistent, right? And you provide value. So kind of honing in, you have to add value, you have to add value, you have to add value. Invest in social media strategy, including testing what works. What we kind of spoke about a moment ago about employee advocacy. It is so important. Otherwise, you're just kind of like screaming into the ether, right? So you really need more engagement. You need more employee advocacy. You need them helping you forward your strategy. It can't be like in a silo. And remember, you're selling to people with emotions, real people. So really kind of focus in on that parts. One thing I just wanted to kind of mention for 1 second is beware of dark social. I know it kind of makes you think this, like, where's society going? No, it doesn't have any ominous views of society. It's more so the majority of sharing happens via email, text, things like Slack now. So 16% of all this stuff going on social right now is trackable with attribution, and 84% falls into this dark social area, which just means you can't like attribute people sharing your stuff. The cookies can't capture it. There's conversations happening, behind closed doors, like on Slack and email and chat. And, people are just having a conversation in a hallway and be like, oh, have you tried so-and-so? Or no, I haven't. So you have to be wary that you can't attribute everything. And I know a lot of times you'll hear salespeople going, well, what's the result of this specific small activity? And to be honest, like a lot of marketing is death by a million cuts. There is no like silver bullet. There is no one thing, and no one thing moves the needle that much. You have to do a lot of things. And over time of consistency is when you really start to see that snowball get bigger and bigger. So tell your sales folks to watch this webinar too. As I mentioned, attribution can be really challenging in marketing because there is a lot that you could be doing that's really good and valuable, but then you won't be able to see a straight ROI to it. Eventually, you do want to see things like, hey, my sales went up. That's how we always want to kind of tie everything back to. So geo rollout it's kind of one of those things where you have a set of budget, and instead of necessarily rolling it out all over the US, you say, hey, I'm going to focus and spend a lot more money in New York or San Francisco or Miami. And that, especially if you have influencers or if you have investors in some kind of smaller area, you can go in a lot harder with that area, and they would make you think that you're coming in a lot more aggressive. So it might be a really good way to get VC funding because you look really big for a short amount of time. So there's some strategies around geo rollouts. All right, referrals. So in 2020, there's a 1% referral rate, and two men in a truck have a 96% referral rate, right? So this is an amazing social media post in general, great social proof. This is everything we should be doing. And then you have to look at like, what are they doing to get that amazing rate? And obviously delighting customers, but also being a little bit irreverent, and fun. That kind of makes people want to kind of join in on the fun and be a part of it, right? So you want that tribe. People are 4 times more likely to buy when referred by a friend. So after you watch this webinar, please do refer us to your friends. The customer lifetime value of referrals is 16% higher than non-referrals. So they persevere and they spend more money with you over time, right? And word of mouth accounts for 20 to 50%. I'm amazed that sometimes, people will refer me to another company and they really didn't do anything to double check us as an agency and they just sign up. That's the power of referrals, right? And they do stay longer and they do everything else. So versus like I will go through 3 rounds of RFP and then go through more rounds and more rounds. That referral just went and I skipped all of that with them. So it's pretty amazing. Most of our business is driven by referrals and I love it. So please do refer us. Sorry I'm annoying you with my friendship. So as a referral, you really want to stay in contact with your customers a lot more, not just when it's time for renew and you send them something. How can you delight them? How can you give them a little special, make them feel special so that way they're more prone, one, to stick with you for retention and to refer you. There's a thing that if you could improve your retention rate by 5%, I think it goes up 25% in profit. So retention is really, really huge. All right, build a strategy for 2022 and beyond. We have a great webinar, so do please sign up for that on our website, AllisonEllery.com, and go to resources, and there's the webinar. It's kind of just chocked full of insights just like this one, so be sure to check it out. All right, if you have any questions, we're here for it. I'm going to give you my email address in a second. This is our awesome team. There's also folks that aren't featured in here, but we are so delighted to be speaking with you and possibly working with you, so please do. If you have any questions, contact us at Allison Ellery Consulting, and there's our website, AllisonEllery.com. So we really do look forward to, continuing this conversation with you. And if you feel like this at all after it, you should, because you sat through this whole thing. You were hit with so many cool lead generation tactics. We're really excited for it. And if you did stay for the extra end for a little Easter egg, if you tell me and you shoot me an email that you stayed for this, I will extend you a special something. So please do tell me by email that you stayed to the end and you saw this little dog dancing. Well, have a fabulous, fabulous day. And thank you for spending this time with us today. Bye. And I really do hope we stay in contact. And please do let me know about the dog so I can get you something. All right. Bye.